The conference room smelled of stale corporate coffee and nervous sweat, a combination I had grown to associate with impending disaster over my 30 years in software engineering. I sat at the head of the mahogany table, my fingers resting on the aluminum case of my laptop. I was 54 years old, and after 5 years of building the backbone of Logiflow, I was not easily rattled. I knew the architecture of our logistics platform inside and out. More importantly, I knew that my code was the only thing keeping the company from collapsing. Standing at the whiteboard was Audrey Vance. She was 27 years old, fresh out of business school with a shiny new MBA, and she was the founder's daughter. Her father, Donald Vance, had appointed her as our chief technology officer exactly 4 days ago. In those 4 days, she had used the word synergy 12 times and had already suggested, "We rewrite our entire backend in a trending language she read about on a flight." "Gavin," Audrey said, pointing a plastic pointer at the monitor displaying our system diagram. "I am looking at this Nexus 8 module you built, and frankly, it is just bloated. We are trying to clean up the codebase before the Zenith Tech acquisition next week. Zenith wants a modern, lightweight system, not this legacy junk." The room was dead silent. My engineering team, including Toby, our junior developer, and Sean, our systems administrator, stared at their desks. They knew what Nexus 8 was. It was not bloat. It was a custom-built, asynchronous routing and caching engine that bypassed our database for active logistics tracking. It was the reason our API could handle 15,000 concurrent shipping requests without crashing the servers. "It is not bloat, Audrey," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Nexus 8 handles our database query caching. It routes high-frequency tracking updates directly to memory. If you remove it, the database will be hit with thousands of writes per second. The API response times will go from 40 milliseconds to over 5 seconds. The platform will freeze." Audrey laughed, a short, patronizing sound. "5 seconds? People wait longer than that for a coffee, Gavin. We are streamlining. Zenith is looking for clean, simple code." She walked over to the system console displayed on the wall. She had full administrator access to our main production repository. I had told Donald Vance 3 days ago that giving his daughter administrative access to the live code repository was a massive risk, but Donald had just patted my shoulder and told me that Audrey needed to feel empowered. "Gavin, we do not need this complex database trickery," Audrey said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "We need a simple, clean main branch. I am going to delete the Nexus 8 directory and commit the changes." "Audrey, do not touch that repository," I said. "If you push that change to the main branch, our auto-deploy system will push it directly to production. The entire application will lose its connection to the tracking database." "You are always so negative, Gavin," she sneered. "You are an obstructionist. You do not want this company to succeed because you did not think of the optimization yourself." With a dramatic flourish, she clicked the delete button, typed a commit message, and pushed the code to the main branch. The terminal screen on the wall scrolled with green text for 2 seconds, and then the repository showed the updated status. "Done." I sat back in my chair. The damage was done. The deploy pipeline was already fetching the code. "You just deleted the entire routing layer," I said. "The application is now a shell. It has no way to fetch or save shipping data." Audrey turned to me, her face flushed with anger. "See, this is exactly the kind of toxic attitude that we need to clean out. You are not a culture fit for the new Logiflow, Gavin. You are fired. Pack your things." "I want you out of this building before the lunch break," the room gasped. Toby looked like he was going to throw up. He stared at me, his eyes wide and terrified. He was 24 years old, and I had mentored him since he graduated. He knew the storm that was coming. I looked at Audrey. I looked at the screen where 3 years of my optimization work had just been wiped out, and then my phone buzzed on the table. It was a number I recognized. Marshall Cole, the vice president of engineering at Zenith Tech, the company that was supposed to buy Logiflow next week for $350,000. He had been calling me for 2 weeks, trying to recruit me. I had ignored his calls out of loyalty to Donald Vance, who had hired me 5 years ago when Logiflow was just 3 people in a basement. I picked up the phone. I swiped the screen and put it to my ear, right in front of Audrey and the entire team. "This is Gavin," I said. "Gavin," Marshall Cole said, his voice loud and clear in the quiet room. We are finalizing our technical review of Logiflow today. Honestly, your database engine is the only reason we are valuing the company this high. The rest of their codebase is a disaster. We want to know if you are ready to join us. I looked directly into Audrey's eyes. She was standing there with her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face, completely unaware of who was on the other end of the line. Yes, Marshall, I said, my voice steady. I accept Zenith Tech's offer. I can start immediately. My schedule just cleared up. Marshall paused. That is great news. Is everything okay over there? Everything is fine, I said. I will be at your office in an hour. I hung up the phone. I closed my laptop, stood up, and gathered my notebook. I did not look at Audrey. I did not look at the rest of my team. I walked out of the conference room, my leather shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. I knew the technical reality. The authentication tokens were cached in memory, which meant the admin panel would still function for exactly 30 minutes. Once those cached tokens expired, the system would lock everyone out, and with the Nexus 8 directory deleted, the system would have no way to verify new login requests. Audrey had not just fired me. She had locked herself inside a burning server room and thrown away the fire extinguisher. The walk from the conference room to my desk was about 50 feet, but it felt like crossing a border. Around me, the Logiflow office was buzzing. Sales reps were ringing a gong to celebrate a new contract. The marketing team was arguing about colors, and the espresso machine was screaming. None of them knew that the company was already dead. They were walking around on a corporate corpse that had not started to decay yet. I reached my desk, where my monitors displayed the server consoles. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet and packed my mechanical keyboard, my headphones, and a photo of my family. I left the company hoodie and the branded water bottle. I even left the 5-year service plaque they had given me last week, which was cheap acrylic and already scratched. Gavin. A voice whispered. It was Sean, our lead systems administrator. Sean was pale, vibrating from caffeine, and wearing a faded t-shirt. He was the only other person who understood our infrastructure, mostly because he had to wake up at 3 a.m. when things broke. Is it true? Sean asked, looking over his shoulder. Did Audrey actually delete the Nexus 8 directory? She clicked delete in the visual interface and confirmed the push, I said. She thinks she is streamlining the repository. Scene's face lost all of its color. But the API gateway and the load balancers rely on Nexus 8, he said. If that directory is gone, the health checks will fail in about 8 minutes. Yes, about 8 minutes, I agreed. Then the autoscaler will try to spin up new virtual server instances to replace the ones it thinks are failing. But since the base deployment image pulls from the main repository branch, every new instance will spin up without the database routing layer. They will crash immediately. It is going to be an infinite loop, Sean said, his voice rising. AWS will bill us thousands of dollars for the resource usage every single hour. I popped a stress ball into my box. That is exactly what will happen, I said. I have to stop the deployment pipeline, Sean said, pulling out his phone. Don't do it, I said. Audrey fired me for being an obstructionist. If you stop the deployment pipeline now, you are overriding the CTO's direct commit. She will fire you on the spot. You have a heavy mortgage and twins on the way, Sean. You cannot afford to lose your job today. Scene swallowed hard. He looked at the server status monitors on the wall. All the lights were still green. So we just let it burn, he whispered. It is already burning, Sean, I replied. Do not intervene. Let Audrey see what clean and simple code actually looks like. Scene nodded slowly. I did not see anything, he said. I was in the break room, good man, I said, picking up my box. As the elevator doors closed, I saw Audrey walking out of the conference room, holding her laptop like a shield. She looked confused, staring at her screen as the first system warnings began to pop up. I walked out into the Seattle rain. I hailed a ride and told the driver to take me to the Zenith Tech headquarters in South Lake Union. My phone buzzed. My access to Logiflow's Slack and Google Workspace had been revoked. Audrey was fast with the admin panel, but she was too late. Zenith Tech's headquarters was a massive building of glass and steel. I walked to the reception desk, my box under my arm. Gavin Miller for Marshall Cole. I said to the receptionist. She did not check a list. He is expecting you on the 40th floor. The elevator ride was fast and silent. When the doors opened, Marshall Cole was waiting. He was wearing a dark sweater and jeans. He looked like a man who spent his mornings writing code and his afternoons negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. Gavin, Marshall said, extending his hand. I did not expect you to be this fast. I believe in efficient routing, I said, shaking his hand. My previous path had a critical blockage. Marshall led me to a conference room. We sat down and I placed my box on the floor. Let us cut through the corporate talk, Marshall said. We have been trying to buy Logiflow for 6 months. Our due diligence reports kept showing massive red flags. But every time our team analyzed their database performance and back-end scaling, it was perfect. We knew it was your architecture. It was, I said. I spent 3 years designing that routing system so the platform could handle the volume. And now you are here, Marshall said. What happened? Audrey Vance decided to clean up the codebase, I said. She deleted the Nexus 8 module and pushed the change directly to production. Then she fired me for telling her it would crash the system. Marshall stared at me. She deleted the core database engine? The very thing that makes the app work? Yes, I said. Since the live database is now flooded with direct queries, the server response times will spike, and the autoscaler will go into a crash loop. Logiflow is currently chewing through its cloud hosting budget. Marshall let out a low whistle. A cold smile spread across his face. So if we buy Logiflow next week, we are buying an empty shell? You would be buying a front-end interface that points to server errors, I said. And I am the only one who knows the routing logic well enough to rebuild it. Marshall smiled. Gavin, to be honest, we did not want Logiflow. We wanted your engine to power our new financial logistics project. Why don't we just build it from scratch with the man who designed it in the first place? I want you to be the head of systems architecture for Project Vessel. I will offer you 3 times your Logiflow salary, significant equity, and a team of your own choosing. I looked at him. I could already see the database structure in my head. No legacy technical debt, no cheap patches. Just clean, robust engineering. I have one condition, I said. Name it, Marshall replied. I want to hire Sean, Toby, and Megan from Logiflow as soon as the dust settles. Done, Marshall said, shaking my hand. Welcome to Zenith Tech, Gavin. My first week at Zenith Tech was like stepping out of a noisy construction site into a quiet library. No one screamed, no one threw buzzwords around, and the meetings actually ended on time. I sat in my new office, translating the database architecture in my head into Zenith secure systems. We were building Project Vessel on a modern secure stack. Meanwhile, my phone was a digital window into the absolute chaos at Logiflow. I had not blocked Sean or Toby. I needed to know they were okay, and a small part of me wanted to watch the fallout of Audrey's incompetence. On Tuesday at 11 p.m., I got a text from Toby. Gavin, the database is locked up. The autoscaler spun up 400 server instances in 3 hours before Sean manually shut down the pipeline. Audrey is screaming that AWS is scamming us. She tried to edit the routing config file in Notepad on her local computer and push it, but it corrupted the file encoding. The staging site is throwing 500 errors. On Wednesday morning, Sean texted me. I haven't slept in 36 hours, Gavin. Every time we try to patch the database connections, the API throws access errors. Audrey keeps asking why we cannot just use Control-Z to undo the server changes. I think she was crying in her office. Jerry is panics calling the Zenith team, telling them that everything is fine and they are just running a routine update. I replied to Sean, check the database configuration. Audrey probably overwrote the security headers, and Sean, go home, get some sleep. Let it fail. I can't, Sean wrote back. The final acquisition demo is on Friday. If the system is not running, Donald Vance will lose the sale and the company will go under. I went back to my work. I had no pity for Donald or Audrey. They had treated the engineering team like replaceable parts. But the real blow came on Thursday afternoon. I was in the middle of a code review when a legal courier arrived at the Zenith lobby. He handed me a thick manila envelope. Inside was a formal lawsuit from Logiflow. Donald and Audrey had hired a local law firm to sue me. The lawsuit accused me of intellectual property theft, sabotage, and planting malicious code. They claimed that before I was fired, I had intentionally booby-trapped the database routing system to fail when I left. They were seeking $5,000 in damages and an immediate injunction to stop me from working at Zenith Tech. I stared at the documents, my blood running cold. It was a desperate, vicious move. They knew their company was collapsing, and they were trying to blame me to salvage the Zenith buyout. I immediately called my attorney, Lewis Davis. We met at his office in downtown Seattle an hour later. Lewis was a seasoned intellectual property lawyer. He read through the lawsuit, his face calm and analytical. "This is a classic intimidation tactic," Lewis said, tossing the documents onto his desk. "They are trying to freeze you out, but they have a major legal problem. They have to prove you planted malicious code, which their own repository logs will disprove. Brad or Audrey's commit history will show she pushed the delete command." "But there is more to it, Lewis," I said. I pulled a folder of documents from my briefcase. 5 years ago, when I joined Logiflow, I brought my custom-built database routing engine, Nexus 8, with me. I had built it over 2 years of private consulting. I did not sell the code to Logiflow. I signed a non-exclusive licensing agreement. The contract stated that Logiflow had a license to use Nexus 8, but that license would terminate immediately if I was fired without cause, or if the company breached our agreement. He pulled out my original employment contract and the licensing agreement from 5 years ago. "This is perfect," he said. "You were terminated without cause on Monday." Under the terms of this agreement, their license to use Nexus 8 ended the moment Audrey said you were fired. "They have no legal right to run your code." "Exactly," I said. "But there is a catch." During the due diligence process last month, Zenith Tech demanded proof that Logiflow owned all of its intellectual property. Donald Vance told me I needed to sign an IP assignment agreement to transfer the ownership of Nexus 8 to Logiflow permanently. I refused. I told him I would only negotiate that transfer as part of the acquisition payout. But when I looked at the due diligence folder Logiflow sent to Zenith last week, I saw a signed IP assignment agreement with my signature on it. Lewis leaned forward, his face turning serious. "Did you sign it?" "Never," I said. "I have never seen that document in my life. Audrey must have used a digital signature generator to forge my name on the document to make sure the acquisition did not stall." Lewis took a deep breath. Under Washington Revised Code, Section 9A, 60.20, forgery is a Class C felony. If Audrey Vance forged your signature on an intellectual property transfer document to secure a $350,000 acquisition, she committed a major crime. And under contract law, a forged signature makes the contract void ab initio, meaning it is void from the very beginning. Logiflow never owned Nexus 8. I smiled. It was a cold, hard feeling. "So, they are suing me for sabotaging code they do not even own." "Not only that," Lewis said, his voice filled with professional satisfaction. "Their continued use of Nexus 8 in their system and their attempt to sell it to Zenith Tech constitutes a direct violation of 17 U.S.C. Section 106, which covers your exclusive rights as the copyright owner. We are not just going to defend this lawsuit, Gavin. We are going to countersue. We'll file for a federal injunction to freeze their system and halt the acquisition immediately." I stood up and shook Lewis's hand. "Let us file the paperwork," I said. The trap was set. Audrey had tried to destroy my career to cover up her own incompetence, but she had handed me the legal rope to hang her company. Friday morning was the acquisition demo, and I knew exactly how it was going to play out. No one at Logiflow knew that their entire technology stack was built on a forged foundation, and that the architect was about to pull the plug. Friday morning arrived with a heavy gray fog. Inside the Logiflow offices, the energy would be frantic, caffeine-driven panic. Inside Zenith Tech, it was just another Friday. My new team was preparing for our morning sprint. I was in my office, monitoring the build status of Project Vessel. On my second monitor, I had a private chat window open with Toby and Sean. They were giving me a live play-by-play of the disaster. At 10 a.m., Toby messaged, "The Zenith team is here. 2 corporate lawyers, their VP of product, and Marshall Cole." Audrey is sweating through her blazer. Her hands are shaking so badly she dropped her adapter twice. At 10:15 a.m., Sean sent an update. Audrey is starting the demo. She is showing them how fast the metrics load. Gavin, she is running the app off a local CSV file. She hard-coded the database responses. It is a complete mock-up. If the Zenith VP clicks on anything other than the primary dashboard link, the whole application will throw a 404. I leaned back, sipping my coffee. It was the oldest trick in the book, vaporware. I had already warned Marshall Cole how to test the system. At 10:22 a.m., Toby messaged. The Zenith VP just asked a question. He wants to see the shipping latency report for the third quarter of last year. He wants to check the database load during high-volume periods. At 10:24 a.m., Sean wrote. Audrey froze. She told him that historical data is archived on a separate secure server to reduce live latency, so she cannot pull it up right now. The VP did not accept that. He told her to unarchive it. He said they need to verify the database schema and query times before signing the agreement. At 10:27 a.m., Toby sent. Audrey is trying to change the dates in the browser inspector on the fly. She is actually typing code into the developer console in front of them to redirect the links. At 10:29 a.m., Sean wrote, Error 500. A massive red error box just covered the projection screen. The front end crashed. The Zenith lawyer stood up. Marshall Cole looked at Donald Vance and said, This application isn't communicating with a server. This is a static site. Where is your active backend? At 10:35 a.m., Toby messaged. The demo is over. The Zenith team packed up. Marshall Cole told Donald Vance that the deal is on hold pending an immediate audit. Donald looks like he is going to have a heart attack. He is screaming at Audrey. She had to admit that she canceled the automated backup subscription last month to save $800 on the cloud hosting budget. They have no backups. The repository is ruined. I closed the chat window. The acquisition was dead. A $350,000 deal had vanished because of Audrey's incompetence. At 11:30 a.m., I walked into the main conference room at Zenith Tech. Donald Vance, Audrey, and their defense lawyer were sitting on one side of the table. They had agreed to meet here immediately, thinking they could negotiate a settlement. Marshall Cole and our legal team sat on the other side. When Donald saw me walk in, he stood up and pointed a finger at me. You, Donald yelled. You sabotaged the system. It worked fine for 5 years until you walked out. You planted a logic bomb in the code to destroy the demo. We are going to ruin you, Gavin. I sat next to Marshall Cole. My lawyer, Lewis Davis, stood up and adjusted his suit jacket. Mr. Vance, Lewis said, his voice calm and cold. Let us look at the facts. We have analyzed the repository logs. Here is the commit history from Monday afternoon. At 2:14 p.m., a commit was pushed by the user Audrey admin. The commit message was repository cleanup. The logs show that this commit deleted the entire Nexus 8 database routing directory. Your daughter deleted the database connection, not Gavin. Audrey stood up, her face pale. That was just optimization. Gavin did not document the dependencies. He made the code complex on purpose. It is sabotage by design. No, Audrey, I said. That is called software architecture. You deleted the load-bearing walls, and now you are complaining that the roof fell on your head. Lewis Davis slid a second document across the table. This is the intellectual property assignment agreement that you submitted to Zenith Tech, he said. It bears Gavin Miller's signature, transferring the ownership of Nexus 8 to Logiflow. Donald Vance frowned. Yes, we own the code. It is a work for hire. Actually, Mr. Vance, it is not, Lewis said. Under the terms of the original employment agreement, Gavin licensed Nexus 8 to you on a non-exclusive basis. That license terminated the moment you fired him without cause, on Monday. And as for this assignment agreement, we have already run a forensic digital analysis on the document. The digital signature was generated from Audrey's IP address on Tuesday night. 24 hours after Gavin was fired, the room went dead silent. Audrey looked like she was about to faint. Donald turned to look at his daughter, his eyes filled with sudden dread. Audrey, Donald whispered. What did you do? She forged Gavin's signature, Lewis said. Under Washington Revised Code Section 9A60.020, this is forgery, a Class C felony. Because the signature is forged, the contract is void ab initio. Logiflow never owned Nexus 8. Their attempts to run, modify, or sell that code to Zenith Tech constitute copyright infringement under 17 U.S.C. Section 106. Donald Vance sank back into his chair. He looked old and defeated. Marshall Cole leaned forward. Under the material adverse change clause in our letter of intent, Zenith Tech is officially withdrawing our offer to purchase Logiflow, Marshall said. And we are notifying our board of potential fraud. Donald's lawyer leaned over to him and whispered. The lawyer shook his head. There was no defense. We have a proposal, Lewis Davis said. Gavin will agree not to report the forgery to the King County prosecutor, and we will not file the copyright injunction in federal court immediately. In exchange, Logiflow will drop their lawsuit against Gavin, sign a mutual release, and immediately release Sean, Toby, and Megan from their non-compete agreements. Donald looked at Audrey and nodded slowly. "Fine," Donald whispered. "We will sign." As they walked out, I looked out the window. The structure they had built on lies had collapsed, and I was already building something new. 3 months later, Project Vessel went live with a quiet switch flipped at 2 a.m. I stood in the room, surrounded by my team. Toby was monitoring the user analytics on the front end. Sean was tracking the server loads, and Megan was verifying the database query speeds. "We are seeing a massive spike in volume," Toby said. "Global Freight Partners just completed onboarding. Global Freight Partners had accounted for 40% of Logiflow's revenue. After their 4-day outage, they terminated their contract. 2 weeks later, Logiflow filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and we acquired their clients without spending a single dollar on marketing. How is the latency?" I asked Sean. "Average query response time is 11 milliseconds, Sean reported, tapping his monitor. "The system is running 5 times faster than Logiflow ever did." I watched the data flow across the main screen. Gold lines of data pulsed across a digital map, representing shipping routes and transactions. It was the system I had spent 5 years trying to build at Logiflow, but running on hardware and architecture that actually supported it. "We have 0 error logs," Megan said. "The system is clean, Gavin." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. "Good work, team," I said. "Let us get some pizza." The celebration was quiet. We knew the system worked because we had built it on solid foundations. Around 4 a.m., Marshall Cole walked into the room, holding a folder of documents. "Congratulations, team," Marshall said. "Our stock is up 4% in after-hours trading." "Gavin, I thought you might want to see the latest news." I opened the folder. The venture capital firm that funded Logiflow was suing Donald and Audrey Vance personally for breach of fiduciary duty and investor fraud, alleging they fabricated due diligence data to force the acquisition. "They are going to lose everything," Marshall said. Donald listed his home and yacht to pay legal fees, and Audrey faces criminal charges for forgery. I felt no sadness. They had refused to respect the craft of engineering, and they paid the price 6 months after the collapse. The final act of the Logiflow tragedy took place. I received an email from the liquidation firm handling the remains of Logiflow's assets. The email had the subject line, "Urgent decryption request, legacy tax audit." The liquidators were trying to extract historical transaction logs to satisfy a federal tax audit, but they were locked out. The archives had been encrypted, and the GPG private key required to decrypt them lived in a secure digital vault that required 2-factor authentication. One of the keys belonged to the CTO, but Audrey's access had been revoked. The other key belonged to me, the lead architect. Marshall Cole told me I had no legal obligation to help, but I knew there were innocent businesses who needed those documents to avoid audits. I agreed to help. I drove down to the old Logiflow office. The building looked the same, but the blue logo had been peeled off the glass front doors. Inside, it was a ghost town. Desks were piled in the corners, monitors were stacked, and the silence was heavy. A liquidation agent named Steve met me in the empty lobby. "Thank you for coming, Gavin," Steve said. "We have been trying to open these database archives for weeks." We called Audrey, but she thought the system backup password was password 123. "It wasn't," I said. I connected to the server, inserted the GPG key I had kept secure since the day I was fired, and entered my password. The progress bar on the screen began to fill. 10%, 50%, 100%. The screen read, "Decryption successful, manifest saved." Steve let out a long sigh of relief. "You are a lifesaver, Gavin." "I am just the builder," I said, standing up. "I am just cleaning up the mess one last time." I looked around the empty office where I had spent 5 years of my life. I had thought that working hard was enough to keep me safe, but I was only safe because I owned the knowledge. As I walked out of the building, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered it. "Hello, Gavin," a voice said. It was Donald Vance. His voice was weak, raspy, and broken. "Gavin, I realized something too late. That Nexus 8 database engine. It wasn't bloat, was it? I stopped, my hand on the handle of my car door. No, Donald, I said. It was the foundation of your entire company. I let Audrey break the foundation, Donald whispered. I let her destroy it. Yes, you did, I said. I am sorry, Gavin. I am so sorry. I listened to the static on the line. I thought about telling him about my new salary or how we had taken all of his clients. But I did not need to. The empty office, the bankruptcy, and the silence were loud enough. Goodbye, Donald, I said, and hung up the phone. I got into my car. As I drove away from the empty building, my phone buzzed with a message from Toby. Toby wrote, Gavin, vessel just hit a 120,000 transactions per second. We need you to approve the cluster scaling. Also, we ordered Thai food for lunch, I smiled. I put the car in drive and merged onto the highway, heading back to Zenith Tech, back to the builders, and back to work. Next time you delete something, make sure you know what it does. Because sometimes you are not just deleting code. You are deleting your own future.